Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today where we will discuss how can we be driving the adoption of AI in the pharmaceutical industry. Technology, as we know, has always driven large changes. Whenever there's a large change in technology, there is a reflected change in the world as we know it. In the last year, we have been on a roller coaster ride, I feel, with Open API, Chat GPT, DALI, Bard. There is absolutely no facet of our life which is untouched. Every company is thinking, how does this impact our strategy? In fact, there's a lot of discussion and debate as to whether this will change the world as we know it. Uh, One of the industries and one of the spaces where this discussion is imperative is healthcare. Healthcare, unlike many other industries, is quite heavily regulated, but it has a lot to gain and actually, gain from in terms of AI. But the question is, where will the change start and what will be needed to drive that change? I have the pleasure of being accompanied today by three esteemed panelists: Nisha Rajagopal, Nipun Jain, and Dr. Debashish Talukdar. I invite you to introduce yourself briefly to our attendees. Nisha, why don't we start with you?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me here, Divya. I'm looking forward to a really interesting discussion. I'm a data scientist in the multimodal data analytics team in the Global Drug Development Organization at Novartis. So my day-to-day work is really working with biomarker data from patients enrolled in clinical studies, trying to understand who's going to respond to therapy, who's not, how do we track their prognosis better. In my past life, I was at a smaller company, Syros Pharmaceuticals, where I spent many years both in preclinical drug discovery as well as in the translational and clinical space. And I like to describe myself as someone who sits right in the intersection of biology, statistics, and machine learning, and specializes in translation, if you will, between those fields. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Nisha. I think that capability is going to be much more crucial as we go forward, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. Nipun, would be great if you can maybe go next.
Thank you, Divya. It's a pleasure to join you for this panel discussion. My name is Nipun. I have been working for AstraZeneca for the last 7 years in different roles and capacities. My most recent and current role is leading the innovation and partnership function for the international region, and in AstraZeneca parlance, international region largely comprises of countries spread across Latin America, Middle East, Africa, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. For these geographies, I run something called as the A-Catalyst Network, which is an AstraZeneca approach to establishing partnerships with healthcare ecosystem players to try to find bottlenecks in the patient journey and improve them through technological interventions. So the network is a catalyst to transform healthcare. It's a wordplay, and it comprises of partners, solution providers, startups, innovators, policymakers, and everybody who can help us not just identify the right challenges in the patient journey, but the right solutions, prove those solutions work, scale those solutions, and create policies around that. And many of those solutions are of the nature of artificial intelligence, which is why I think I'm talking to you today. So let's explore a bit more.
Thank you. Thanks, Nipun. Dr. Debashish.
Yeah, thank you, Divya, and hello, everybody. And first of all, thank you for having me, Divya, on this webinar. And I come not from the industry, but more on the consulting side. So my name is Debashish, and I am the CEO of Prescient Healthcare Group. And Prescient is a global biopharma-focused product and portfolio strategy firm. We operate as picking the theme from Nisha at the intersection of science and strategy and insights. And our teams take real pride in helping our pharmaceutical clients take products from being a molecular asset to the clinic and eventually to the full potential. So my experience with AI has been largely in conversations with clients who are wrestling with that question. I think it's still early days. But everybody has great excitement and energy to do more with it. Some have already taken quite a few steps, others are early on. And the other angle through which I look at AI is as a firm which is in knowledge services and could get disrupted with the availability of artificial intelligence tools. So as a CEO, we have board level conversations on how might AI disrupt what we do today. in what we deliver to our pharma clients. So that's me.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Debashish. So I think that was my first question, actually, that, we've all been kind of surprised with the sudden, evolution of AI. AI as a term has existed in some way or form for decades, if you will. But I think the recent advancements have been quite monumental. So what has the reaction been in your, in the companies you work with or the companies you interact with? How has it been? Is it more that of apprehension or more of optimism? Uh, Anyone wants to start?
Maybe I can I can
Yeah,
take the first shot at it. Divya. So
absolutely.
I think at AstraZeneca we have been working with AI for quite some time. I know the hype regarding AI probably led by evolution and availability to general public of large language models is recent.
Yeah,
But I think as a life sciences organization, we have been exploring, experimenting, and hopefully succeeding with some utilization of AI in some form or fashion for quite a few number of years.
right.
I think the focus previous to the last 1.5 year has mostly been on the area of narrow AI, which is utilizing AI to a specific specialized task or domain, which is where an AI algorithm, software, or model has been trained to do something which is highly unique. It could be interpreting medical images for disease risk, for example. We have been working in these areas for quite some time. The recent hype, I think, is largely around generative or large language model AI. I think we are moving slowly towards artificial general intelligence. Of course, we are not quite there yet, and that's why I think the hype exists quite a bit about chat GPTs and similar. It is because now, rather than specific use cases limited to particular trades or specializations, anybody and everybody could potentially explore how AI can support their daily workflows. And I think as a pharma company, we are, of course, not ignorant to the fact that this presents a huge potential, as well as some of the risk associated with using technologies which probably need regulations, which need proving how they come up with responses, preventing the problem of hallucinations. So, from an AstraZeneca perspective, I think we are exploring AI, both the more recent generative AI components as well as the uh, long-standing narrow AI capabilities with healthy amount of opportunity and interest. Of course, there is a bit of skepticism in terms of proving the potential and ensuring any use case of AI is not only well understood, but it is explainable, and we are able to consider long-term impacts of using something to augment human capabilities. At the same time, I think presenting a huge opportunity of expanding what we can do with a limited set of resources, augmenting human capabilities, supporting clinicians in finding a better pathway to disease identification, improving patient outcomes. It's such a huge opportunity. I think none of us want to ignore or get
Yeah,
scared or afraid of AI. I think it presents a huge potential to the industry, to the population, and to the well-beings of the planet in general, that all of us owe it to ourselves to assess and evaluate and adopt AI in the right fashion with the relevant guardrails in place. But more interested to hear comments from Nisha and Debashis.
thank you.
Um,
Go for it.
okay, well, yeah. So I mean, in general, in this panel, all the views expressed are my own and don't reflect the company I work for. But and I do sort of still have connections in many smaller companies. And I would say overall, there is yes, there is optimism. I don't see anybody really being scared by it in the healthcare industry. There's optimism, but there's cautious optimism because,
Yeah,
as you mentioned, Divya, it's a highly regulated space, and I think we want to do the right thing. We want to figure out where we should be using it,
yeah,
not just jump in and sort of let it take
absolutely.
over everywhere. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
So, Debashish, are the questions that are coming to you because you interact with clients, small, big, many different companies in the space? And you're talking to them about how can they formulate their strategy? Are the questions that are coming to you changing with with the recent changes in technology?
Yeah, I think that's a very very good point, because Nippon talked about the hype cycle and how at the consumer end, the hype cycle for generative AI was like 5 days or something, right? In terms of getting to that threshold number, I think there's a interesting graph that was presented in our organization, shows how different the speed was around launch of new products or technologies. But while the hype cycle has been extremely fast, what we have found is actually when it comes to grappling with the actual application of AI within pharma, there are many more layers to go through, many more steps to go through. And that is a much more considered and step-by-step approach where things take time. They don't happen at a click of a button. And what we're finding is it's a combination of variety of things. One is pharma is part of the launch from consumer into the enterprise domain. And it's easy to launch a large language model into the wide consumer universe. But if you're going to operate AI within an enterprise and within the data set that are contained within enterprise, and when that enterprise is pharma, where data security is paramount, one needs to be very, very careful on what you trust and bring on board. So I think there is this. I think the cautious part of the cautious optimism is as much driven by safety as it is driven by the potential of the application. The rate limiting step in our conversations that seems to come up is fundamentally the potential for AI is pervasive. And because it's pervasive, it's difficult to choose where to start. And you could literally pick any workflow within pharma and do a systematic evaluation of where in the workflow could we bring an AI-led automation to drive enhancement in productivity. And I think that, I don't know, Nipun and Nisha, how you are seeing it, whether it is in clinical development or commercial applications or specifically patient journey, you pick any element of what we do, you have to make a start somewhere and make gradual progress.
Yeah, I think so.
And actually, that was, going to be something that I wanted to probe on next because, as you mentioned, Debashish, it is pervasive, right? We could pick any process literally and think about what can we do to re-engineer it with this technology. So where do you, and this is probably to Nisha and Nipun too, where do you see this change getting adopted earlier, or where do you expect it to get adopted earlier? Because I think eventually it will be pervasive, but there has to be like the domino has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think there are some scientific areas in the industry that it's like a very clear use case. For example, in early drug discovery, there's there's a part of the process that's called lead optimization where you build like a whole set of compounds, and it's kind of like Legos. You just kind of build different combinations, see if it meets your criteria, whether that's killing cancer cells or like, reducing toxic protein or whatever. And then, so, as you have more and more data, you can predict what something you've not seen can do. So it's a very classic use case for machine learning in general. And, AI to me, I guess I sort of define it as a continuum on the machine learning scale when it's, starts to get better at combining features. So yeah, that is a very classic use case already being implemented widely, I think.
Right.
The other case is, the pathology images, which is right now a very manual task. I think there's differing opinions on how much technology can contribute beyond, the trained eye of a pathologist. But I think it's definitely very heavily in adoption. One of the other issues, like also operational, like, there's so much work that's just routine and repetitive that we do, like, writing protocols, writing reports, and so much of it can be automated. So I think that's another area people are looking at. So these are sort of, I think I see these as early adoption areas.
Got it.
Maybe just adding on to that, I think what Nisha explained, I think the starting point is optimization of what is currently being done. So the clinical development of new drugs, very intensive process, very somewhat you you throw everything in the kitchen sink at it and then see what works, right? And to optimize that process through machine learning, identifying new drug targets, potentially reducing the cost of development of and increasing the probability of success of new drug candidates. That's a classic, as Nisha put it, a case of application of AI in area of more real world application rather than developing drugs of the future, but potentially identifying the right patients at the right time. Nisha did talk about pathology, and I think that's one of machine vision classic use cases where humans, while they may be good at identifying and differentiating normal versus abnormal biomarkers or medical images or any such data, right? They are limited by their time and their capacity of number of people we have, and AI can optimize really that pathway. I think the second step is, of course, then providing that optimization and taking it to those resource constrained environments where beyond optimization, it's augmentation of capabilities, right? So if you have 100 clinicians available, they potentially can look at 10,000 medical images for screening and diagnosis. Well, in a lower middle income group country, that equation can be very lopsided. And utilizing AI driven models to triage and identify patients, those who are most potentially at risk, and sending them to pathways where a clinician or a physician can evaluate, assess, and treat them. I think it goes beyond optimization, because rather than just saying, oh, we'll help the clinician do their job better, we are now saying the clinician is that was able to serve 1,000 people or patients before can now service 10,000 patients. And I think that's the new value. When it gets to the level of pervasiveness, probably we may have something entirely new, right? So something which is not being done currently, rather than an optimization problem, it would be something entirely new. An example could be, we know from a disease area perspective, many organ systems are interrelated. For example, the cardiovascular organ system works in conjunction with each other, right? So people who are diabetic are at elevated risk of hypertension, chronic kidney disease, and heart failure. And AI could really be good at identifying symptoms in a diabetic patient who could be at elevated risk of chronic kidney disease and identify that risk early. So rather than treating and managing a disease when it manifests itself and probably manifests itself as end-stage renal failure, the disease risk is identified at an early stage, which it is more manageable, and we can improve population health. So for us at AstraZeneca, I think what we are trying to do is to start with that optimization problem, going to the augmentation as the next step, and I think the value creation as the third step, and that's the level of pervasiveness we see. And of course, that's the narrow AI definition that I talked about. When we talk about generative AI, I think we're quite early stages to understand how this may grow and develop, but potentially hyper personalization of content, right, for patient education and awareness, or engaging clinicians, or maybe chatbots where patients can interact and get to referrals to a specialist based on their condition. I think the applications are just emerging, and it will take a lot of experimentation, trial and error to see what works and where the most value gets created. But during all of this, I think one important aspect is when we are working in healthcare, regulation, compliance, ethics, data privacy are some of the guiding principles. We can't have a Wild West environment where we just do anything and everything that comes to our mind. We need to ensure that anything that gets done is not a black box AI where the AI takes decisions which are not explained by their creators or their consumers. We need to ensure any application of AI is not done because of the hype, but because of real world value that it creates. And any AI decisions or influence or prioritization that gets resulted from use of such technologies actually is explainable to the end users, so that we ensure there are no unintended side effects.
No, absolutely. I like the way you've categorized it, kind of optimize, augment, and then, additional value creation. It's a very simple way of kind of structuring the problem. Uh, One of the challenges I feel, and feel free to agree or disagree, is that this the people who are well versed with this technology or understand how this technology work are different from the people who are actually living the day-to-day life of the use case, or know the needs, let's say, whether it's the customer needs or whether it is the process needs, right? So there is a translation gap, and Nisha, you spoke about that in your introduction. It's like we have a hammer, but we have to find which nail to kind of hit it with, right? So how are you in, how are companies kind of trying to bridge this gap in terms of, knowledge or skills? Because unless we understand what could this technology solve, it's a little hard to dream, right? What all could that's where I'm kind of struggling. And but any thoughts, Nisha, maybe to start with, and then of course open to the group.
Yeah, I think this is sort of, as a data scientist in the industry and in the space of biology for so long, this is always the biggest roadblock is communication, having shared vocabulary,
Yeah.
having the ability to understand each other. And I think this is not just a technical reskilling. There's a cultural mindset shift that goes into creating a truly cross-functional environment. And I think some of the conversations that are happening now around cognitive diversity, having more inclusive teams, I think all of these are really valuable in the context of adopting a new technology such as AI. And I think companies are starting to shift in that direction. That what does a cross-functional team really look like?
Yeah.
Whose voices are on the table? And I think those are important questions. So I think, but to your question about reskilling, I think it's so hard to know where to start because it's sort of dependent on the use case a little bit, and how broad should it be? In my opinion, it should be very broad, but that's easy to say. But, what is it that people really need to know? And even if, we'd ideally like a demo to really democratize knowledge, you can't, there's a feasibility question also. So I think, I'll start with, I would say there's a lot of thinking going on around it. It's not, there is a lot of thought going on around it. Like, how do we roll out these trainings? How do we get people talking about these things? As data science teams, we are always kind of reevaluating new technologies, I would say, in the spaces I've been, because interpretation is so important and data sets are so limited.
Yeah.
Rather than actually employ a deep learning or neural net, I end up using simpler models like linear models, which is not simple at all. If you ask statisticians, as like, you could spend your whole life interpreting them. But I think a lot of times, that's the kind of thing I would say I end up using in my day-to-day life, but that doesn't mean we are not evaluating newer methods that are coming up and thinking about it. So I think data science teams, we are already sort of doing that. I do see sometimes, I think there's a danger of super specialization where people want to hire like specialists in deep learning, which is wonderful. But then, like there's a different kind of reskilling that's needed there, where you need to understand the use cases you're working with, the challenges of people, how do they do data collection,
Yeah. Real world.
so
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. So I could kind of go on about, like, I would say that reskilling is something that's on people's minds, but it's maybe not a trivial task, and it's something that is an ongoing conversation. Yeah.
I think, Nisha, I think you make a very good point there in terms of the translation challenge and the communication challenge. In our experience, we have felt that actually it's not even getting to the point of adoption. It's even at the stage of developing the product concept itself, writing the brief, that then the specialists, the technical guys go away and operate on. I think it's really important to get the end users of that application involved very early on.
Yeah.
And this is nothing new. I think this is the golden rule of, I guess, any product development. Make sure the end users are involved very early on. But it's so easy to get excited by the potential of the technology and the tool and start playing with it and developing products, which then you see don't quite land because you haven't engaged with the end users early enough, continuously enough, often enough, right? And that is not only necessary, but could also maybe slow down the process, but is necessary for eventual success.
Yeah.
We certainly have seen that in some of the AI-focused pilots that we have run internally in the organization.
Sure.
It's really important.
I mean, and in fact, I would say that if some of that if that happens way too often, there's also disillusionment. Like,
Yeah.
okay, this is not going to work. Then,
Um,
so that's another watch out, I guess. But I think one thing that again, it's impossible for a single company to kind of crack this on their own, right? There is definitely an ecosystem play here, and that's what we are seeing also in the last year, that the more open the ecosystem, the faster the imagination and the execution. So maybe Nipun, how do you think about, or how are you, because you are working on kind of building an ecosystem for AI adoption. Maybe you can share some thoughts here.
Um, Definitely, Divya, I think the opportunity of AI is huge. And as you've rightly mentioned, the creators of AI are different than the practitioners or the implementers of AI, are different from the end users of AI, which are different from the beneficiaries of how we use AI, right? So let's go through probably an example. We've been talking healthcare and life sciences, right? And population health or patient health is the goal, right? Improving patient outcomes, especially for a goal of health equity, where the intention is that your healthcare outcomes are not defined by the geography or the healthcare system or the clinicians that you have access to, but potentially every patient anywhere in the world gets treated the same way and has the same chance of recovering or long, high quality life. So if that's the outcome, the patients probably are not going to be the creators of the AI or the consumers of the AI or implementers of AI, right? That potentially would be the healthcare systems across the world, both public and private, which will need to adopt AI technologies to better manage, screen, diagnose, treat, clinical decision support systems, and so on, right? But again, is the healthcare system expected to come up with their own solutions? Potentially not. That's the purview of entrepreneurs and startups such as Qureosity, which you are a part of, right?
Right.
Being a AI company specialized in medical imaging AI, right? You are creating. But the gap exists that innovation cannot exist in isolation. You have an innovative product which helps do something which clinicians can use to better manage their patients. But how do you get access to those patients or those clinicians, right? This is where I think companies such as AstraZeneca, right, come in, because being a big pharmaceutical with operations across almost all parts of the world in every geography, with access to key decision makers, from policy perspective, from clinicians, from medical societies, to people who make reimbursement decisions about technologies and software, can come in, because what we as a platform creating this A-Catalyst network can do is connect the innovators to the consumers of that innovation. And that potentially helps us not only identify which is the right innovation to scale, but once an innovation that is scaled, how do we create an environment where that innovation can scale and sustain? So to give an example, we have been working with Curea for almost 4 years now, if I'm not wrong.
That's right.
I think when we started partnering together, Curea was doing lung nodules identification on chest X-rays, but that was being done for identification of tuberculosis. And when AstraZeneca started with working with you, we put forward a challenge that could you also identify malignant lung nodules, which could be indicative of lung cancer. So just doing a stretch target of you are doing X, can you do X plus plus, right? And you were able to create as Curia that algorithm. And once that was created, AstraZeneca through our A Catalyst network as part of our Lung Ambition Alliance, which is an industry coalition where we are saying we want to double the overall survival rate for lung cancer patients in the next 5 years. We were able to scale you. We were able to introduce you in more than, I think, 25 countries so far, screen 2 million people. And we have been able to do that. So connecting innovators to consumers of that innovation. And finally, I think talking about sustainability, right? Our intention as AstraZeneca is not to provide just access or expansion opportunities to innovators, but ensuring the right people are able to make the right decisions to pay for technology. So we are working with you, for example, to run clinical trials about efficacy of AI. We are working with governments of the world to see if the solutions of AI can be reimbursed and made standard of clinical diagnosis or standard of clinical screening. And that's how the complete ecosystem is coming together. So just in this example, we have startups, we have pharma, we have government, we have medical societies, we have CROs all coming together to solve the challenges. And just going back to your question, then how do you prioritize what challenge to solve? I think it's an intersection of couple of things. One is population needs, one is government needs, and one is potentially, the business optimization, right? Because somebody's going to sponsor, subsidize, or invest into maturing technologies and scaling and generating evidence, right? So there has to be some outcomes for everybody involved, whether it's cost optimization for governments on managing overall disease burden, whether it's generating evidence for the likes of your startup, right?
Yeah.
So the prioritization has to be done keeping all the stakeholders in mind, not probably just a single one. I know
Yeah.
it was a long-winded answer, but hopefully it gives you some of the A Catalyst perspective on how we provide that platform of ecosystems to identify which solutions. And it's not always AI, but mostly it is AI, because I think that's the major opportunity that exists right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely not always AI, right? Because I think that's there's an assumption people have that if you have an AI solution and you give it to the beneficiary or the ecosystem, it's going to work. But how has your experience been? Like, is where AI ends and where implementation starts, there is still a lot that has to happen. And I think that's Nipun what we've been on the journey with in the last 4 years, I think. Thank you. So if you uh, Debashish, were you wanting to say something?
No, I had a thought, actually,
Yeah.
just a reflection on the innovation that is happening within the pharma ecosystem. But actually, there is almost a reverse innovation that needs to happen within the technology itself for AI.
Yeah.
Um, and I think somebody in the chat probably mentioned this, which is, are there language models that are more attuned to the needs of life sciences? Um, yeah, do we need large language models for enterprise systems, or do enterprise systems that actually only mine data that sits within the enterprise, are they more suited to small language models,
Right.
which will probably consume less compute power and perhaps be more accurate and hallucinate less? So I
Right.
think there is an almost a reverse innovation feedback, and innovation has to operate in that closed loop, right? That pharma can feed back to the technology players,
Yeah.
and we expect that over time you get tools that are, or technologies that are more fit for purpose for pharma needs and
Yeah.
enterprise needs as well.
Yeah.
So that's a thought that came as I was
Yeah,
hearing.
absolutely. Absolutely. So maybe because I see there are a lot of questions and I want to make sure we get some time for some of the questions. Maybe to wrap up the questions I had, if you had a crystal ball and you were to think about where is this going and what would be your thoughts, and more importantly, what do you think you as an individual you think you it will be needed to enable it? Like, what do you think you would want to see in the ecosystem or in your company so that this adoption or this transformation can get kind of uh, going faster? Again, open for anybody to start.
So
Yeah.
I think crystal ball, let's say it's part crystal ball, part wishful thinking. I
Sure.
think, there's a huge improvement in the space of lab automation. So AI relies on data, and
Yeah.
so far it's been hard to get that kind of data, but lab automation is scaling up. A lot of things that used to be expensive and time consuming are becoming faster. So I think that kind of data availability is going to be is going to be possible. So I think that in theory has the potential to accelerate the rate of drug discovery.
Mhm.
I think the biggest roadblock right now is you find so many amazing things in drug discovery. You think they're going to be real targets, they're going to have a huge benefit. As soon as you put them into a human being, it does something completely different. So there's like a huge loss at
Right.
that stage of translation. And to
Right.
me, the thing is, what are all the things we can do at the earlier stage to reduce that loss? Like, can we
Yeah.
predict failures? Can we bridge the gap between models and human beings? Can we, there's so many things that I hope AI can do. I think the challenges are, like I said, I think, having shared vocabulary and conversation, no one person is going to solve the problem. So I think for, figuring out what is that right kind of reskilling, what is the level of that. We don't all need to know how to implement a neural network.
Yeah.
But we need to understand the caveats. We need to understand when can it be used, when should something else be used. So I think that kind of education broadly can be very valuable. So everybody can go back and think about their use cases. And yeah, I think that's going to be one of the major challenges. It's like just developing that shared vocabulary and ability to have those deep conversations across disciplines. Yeah,
common language that we understand. Absolutely. Thank you.
From my perspective, and since Divya, you asked about a crystal ball, which we don't have, I'll shy away from making very wide generalizations. But I think the only thing we potentially can count on that we'll continue to see increased adoption of both narrow AI and general AI, generative AI capabilities within healthcare. I don't think it's a hype. We will probably succeed more in some areas and less in others, but I think we'll see more and more adoption of AI. I'll talk a bit more on how we should adopt, right? So I think the integration of AI in healthcare will require collaboration between industry, between regulators, between healthcare providers, and of course, innovators or providers or creators of those AI, right? It cannot be a single entity trying to create solutions which meet everybody needs. It's going to be constant dialogue and collaboration. And when we talk about use of AI in healthcare and life sciences, right, ethical considerations, data privacy, transparency of algorithms that are created, I think they will need to be addressed to ensure widespread adoption and scale of AI, because without these foundations, what we may have is cutting edge technology, but then the adoption will be a barrier because if people can't understand what they're adopting, potentially there is an inherent, mistrust that will come in, right? And we'll need to apply it in the right fashion in terms of augmenting capabilities rather than replacing humans, right? The purpose of AI potentially should and would be to ensure optimization of human resources rather than replacing those entirely. And finally, I would say that I think every foundation which dabbles within use of AI for internal or external applications should really have strong guiding principles of AI, which are openly available for everybody to see. As AstraZeneca, we have our own principles published, and our intention is anybody within the industry who uses AI, creates AI, adopts AI, scales AI, or decides applications of AI created by somebody else has those strong guiding principles which are available for everyone, because I think it's an area where regulations are catching up. And before they catch up, it needs to be self-governed, and transparency, explainability, privacy, security are some major principles that I think need to be addressed from the get-go, because we need to ensure the trust and the opportunity which lies within us is treated with respect, and we are able to do justice to the opportunity which lies ahead of us.
Absolutely.
It's a great point, Nipin. I think the topic of AI ethics is a big one for all of us. But to the point of crystal ball gazing, I don't think anybody can profess to know the future. But it's fair to say that if you think of healthcare and pharma, there are things that healthcare and pharma does which are shared with other industries, common business processes. And given that healthcare and pharma tends to be laggard with new technology, digital adoption, and it's a known fact, there are probably things that other industries will lead the way, and then AI and then healthcare and pharma will adopt. But I think there are some specific processes, and certainly when it comes to R&D productivity, which has been a hot topic in pharma for a long time, where one of the big critical parts in R&D productivity is the discovery stage, and lots of things have been thrown over the years, technology and tools to enhance the productivity of that stage, and I think we'll continue to see progress. AI is another tool in that armor that has been used. From our perspective, in our industry, which is knowledge services and consulting, we believe there is huge value in of AI in helping improve the speed and quality of decision making within pharma. To us, there is real potential there, especially as data ingestion and analysis on data becomes more automated, more dynamic, more more scenario-based. There is real potential to develop tools that improve the speed and quality of decision-making up and down the organization. And certainly that has huge value. And Nipun has talked very eloquently about some of the downstream commercialization elements where I'm sure there are many use cases that can come. But I do think AI ethics and I would say simply bandwidth is a big constraint because it's not the technology availability, but the bandwidth that an organization can bring to bear to fundamentally re-engineer critical parts of the process is a big constraint. And I don't think we have a clear view on that, on how much it's taking from organizational resourcing right now. That's something to see how we could make more efficient itself. Yeah.
That's a very fair point. I mean, if your cup is already full, where is the time to actually think about how to transform? It's absolutely right. I'll shift to the questions because I see a lot of them, and we'll just go through them and see, if they're relevant and if one of you wants to pick them up. So the first question is, in healthcare and pharma, can Gen AI take high-level decision ability of the company and help in future investment directions? Similar work is being tested to approving big deals in finance. I think this is referring to some of the things that you just mentioned, Debashish. So maybe you want to take it.
Yeah, no, I think there's huge potential there, but the groundwork is only getting laid right now, and you have to kind of build it brick by brick. But I do think, and we have had some success doing this internally as well, where data ingestion is very automated and easy today based on tools that are available, and you can write algorithms to do an analytics on top of it. You can put a chat interface in the front, and you can have a natural conversational interface where you can interact with the availability of LLM tools to explore scenarios and do modeling and many other things. So I think there is real potential here. The key in pharma is accuracy. Arguably 99% accuracy is as bad as 0% accuracy. So I think there is always be a significant layer of human intelligence, and for every decision-making process, people have to decide what is that curation layer, what is the human intelligence layer, how often it is applied before you put something forward on the basis of which decisions will be made. But this is an exciting space. We do think it will enhance productivity within boardrooms, within meeting decision-making forums of different sorts.
Right. There's a second question here on how pharmaceutical companies are integrating generative AI into their R&D process to shorten drug development, and in what has been the most significant breakthroughs or challenge. I think we spoke about the challenges, but any breakthroughs that anyone wants to share that got you excited?
I don't know if I would call it a breakthrough, but I do see that it's going to be quite valuable for operational tasks, because there's so many repetitive things. We spend so much time just writing the same text and language in different documents. Even
Right.
things like that, it can reduce that time. So
Got it.
I do see that potential, yeah.
There's a question on, can AI help with the MLR process? One of you will have to help me understand what they mean by the MLR process.
So the legal review.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's basically reviewing the content that we use to promote science to our clinicians. It undergoes multiple level of reviews, and one is medical legal. So what you're talking about is clinically sound and legally valid, right? So it's a very human intensive activity, right? So you create content, then somebody who has not been creating the content reviews and approves it, right? So I think MLR content creation and approval both is quite a rife opportunity area for AI to be used, right? We have been at least internally exploring applications of AI, right? Creating hyper-personalized content. And when, of course, you have more content being created, potentially using AI itself to review claims in any content, you make certain claims about efficacy of disease or progression of disease or something of that nature, right? So if AI can, Gen AI is probably one of the tools which can be used to crystallize what claims have been made and have been approved before that potentially can ask. So I think it is going to get there, but we may need to, wait for platform companies and services company to come up with some tools
Right.
which help do that. But potentially one of the areas to watch out for is it's not AI approving AI, so AI creating content and AI approving content, right? So I think we'll
Right.
definitely, just going back to the Bashish's comment, right? Human intelligence and humans in the loop definitely will need to be there. We may augment, we may improve the efficacy and productivity of some of these processes, but I don't think we are probably aiming for full automation yet, because I think pharma industry, particularly, you can't, if you even have a problem of 1% or 0.5% hallucination, that's not going to be acceptable. You can't randomly create a claim which is not backed by science and data, right? So it
Yeah.
is a long way ahead.
I see a question on whether there is a foundational model being created in conjunction with the healthcare company. Uh, I don't think anything is in the public yet, but I don't know if anybody has any, if you want to share anything on that.
I mean, we're not aware. I'm certainly not aware of pharma companies coming together to um, develop foundational models. I think there is a question on whether data can be shared on which models are trained, which
Right.
is specific to pharma, and I'm sure there could be initiatives like that could happen, but not that I'm aware of. But I do go back to something I mentioned earlier, which is um, the applications can be enterprise specific, but that can feed back into the underlying engineering of the model itself, and how they are developed in terms of how well suited they are. Um, LLMs are largely text-based models. They're image-based pieces, and different applications will come up. But there is a genuine case where the compute power required for large models is so significant that actually it may not be economical in most cases. And so, how can you create more efficient models that consume less compute power, can be installed in situ within a pharma company, or even within a function within a pharma company, and still deliver some of the low-hanging fruits of AI? I believe there is innovation that can happen in that direction. Nisha, you're nodding at, you probably have a better clue than what I'm talking about.
I think I was thinking about the compute power issue. Like a lot of times, I think there's a general principle in machine learning that, like, if something simpler can do the task of something more complex, just do the simpler one.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of unspoken rules. So yeah, that's why I was nodding.
Got it. I think there's one question on there's a question on, is there any operational, I think this is for you, Nipun, is there any operational area which AstraZeneca has benefited from by associating with just AI companies?
Uh, so I think we have talked quite a bit about our partnership with Curia, right? So the question is, how has AstraZeneca benefited? I think the intention is, if you are solving some problem, right? So just AI is the question, and the partnership, again, they were just to summarize again. With
Sure.
Curia, we are working for early identification of lung cancer risk by looking at chest X-ray images and identifying risk of malignant nodules in those chest X-rays. The benefit, of course, for a pharmaceutical like AstraZeneca is, if you identify more and more patients, then there are more patients to treat, right? And when we partner with companies such as Curia, we never mandate how those are managed, right? That's a prerogative of the treating physician. But of course, when you have more patients to treat, right, some of them may end up on AstraZeneca therapy. So of course, there is going to be some indirect benefit, but that's not why we do it. We do it because currently, I think the percentages are different, but majority of patients are identified for lung cancer in stage 3 and 4,
Right.
where the overall mortality is quite high, survival is low, and patients may not benefit from available therapies, right? So it's beneficial for the patients to get identified at early stage, which is why we work with companies such as yourself. And the intention is, while patients benefit, right, The companies which provide therapies to treat those patients also benefit. So, as market leaders in some of the areas, including lung cancer, it is our responsibility to improve the patient pathways, make it more efficient as possible. And the whole industry, pharma industry benefits as a whole. And of course, being part of that industry, AstraZeneca also benefits. So hopefully that's what's being asked about. Operational area, definitely, I think chest x-rays being one of the most routinely utilized investigational tools for medical purposes, right? If they can be used to find multiple needles in the same haystack, that's going to be very, very important, right? So how we work with Pure AI or how we work on chest X-ray AI is to use it incidentally. So of course, patients are not prescribed chest X-rays to look for lung cancer because probably when they are being investigated based on symptoms for lung cancer, it's potentially already a late stage, or maybe a chest CT is a better diagnostic tool, or a biopsy. But incidentally, utilizing a large routine diagnostic test to screen for multiple disease areas helps us. So potentially that answers the operational aspect of that question. Hopefully, I've understood that correctly.
Oh, no, I think Nipun, that makes sense, because I think the question is about how has it benefited, but I think if the industry or if the ecosystem benefits, everybody benefits. It's not about an individual player in it. So I think there's someone who has also mentioned that there are companies who are helping with the translation of clinical to English, which is great, because I think that is a common theme that has come up in the discussion on translation, not in the terms of language, but more in terms of clinical speak versus technical speak. I think that's what we mean in a lot of the
I think,
discussion.
and I think those things point to real low hanging fruits.
Absolutely.
Translation and transcription is now highly accurate. We have actually developed a tool which takes highly scientific audio file, which may have a lot of technical terms, and through a combination of different off-the-shelf models that you piece together,
Yeah.
and you can come up with 99% accuracy on transcription itself, which is done in 5 minutes as opposed to taking an hour. And some of those easy low-hanging fruits can actually be delivered rather quickly. And then this is innovation happening at a very federated level, if that makes sense, right? Very distributed manner, as opposed to big innovation happening in the center. And I think to me, the big way to unlock the potential of this is to make everybody aware about the potential of this, and if people are aware and thinking in an AI mindset as to what could be automated, you will find so many opportunities, and they will all add up in a big way. Let 1,000 whatever flowers bloom or lotuses bloom.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think in the space of computational biology in general, there are like these outsourced models where, surprisingly, people don't, there is no compensation necessarily even, but just out of the sheer power of wanting to be part of a bigger problem and curiosity, like people provide all these different solutions, like to solve protein folding, or and then you just kind of integrate the solutions across a lot of different teams, and you find that sometimes the aggregate is better than a single solution.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we certainly have seen that in something we have developed in-house, that you could take a pick of different models, bring it together, because no one model solves the entire piece, and you can focus different parts to different parts of the problem, different models to different parts of the problem. Yeah.
I think the play of the ecosystem is going to be very, very crucial in the development and the adoption of AI. So thank you so much for the conversation today. I think it was a very interesting conversation. I would love to have maybe a similar chat 5 years from now to see where did we actually end up. But thank you for thinking along and brainstorming and sharing some of your experiences. I'm sure it's been very beneficial to all our viewers. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Divya,
you.
for having us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.